Okay, so we are in the Pachad Yitzchok, Maamar Alef, Perek Beis. We stopped in the middle of the paragraph last time, on paragraph Chet, and we were talking about the amazing quality of the face to communicate. It's the only area on the body, on the physical body of a person, that can communicate the aspect of the person that transcends their body. That the panim is called panim because it projects the panim, the inside of the person, which is the dat, the mind of the person, which has the power to manifest itself on the face. And the more an individual has dat, the more it's the ziv hadro, it's the splendor and shine of his face, and it shines through the physicality. And we're saying that dot, which we had discussed until it was a function specifically of Shabbos. So just like we're saying that Shabbos manifests some sort of ethereal quality that is revealed in creation that negates the aspects of creation that we were aware of before, just by turning them from primary to secondary in light of Shabbos. So we're describing the same phenomenon with a person's physical presence and their dat. That your dat can shine forth in a way that negates the presence of a person's physical being to that from a primary to a secondary. Why don't I just start? I'll zip through the beginning of the paragraph. And now we are prepared, we're poised to learn good reason and enlightenment of the words of the sages who explain the blessing of Shabbos, when the pasuk says that Shabbos was blessed, shebaruchu, that God blessed it, b'ma'or panav shel adam, with the illuminated face of a human being. L'chora yesh kan miut hadamot beberchata shel Shabbat. This seems to be a lessening, right? A miut hadamot, a lessening of the description of the blessing of Shabbos. Meaning, if Shabbos is blessed, and I say, where is this blessing manifest? In the light of a person's face. That seems to be a decrease of that general blessing. Ki halo habracha kefi shehi mefuresha b'Torah. This blessing, the way it appears in the Torah, namra b'klaliyut, is said in a very general way. A very general blessing, which means that it should manifest in all areas. Umar panav shel adam, and this description of the illumination of someone's face, harehu prat, that's just a detail in Cain, and therefore nimtza, turns out, ki chachamim tzimtzemu, the sages actually limited et klaliyuta shel bracha, the general aspect of the blessing, lahofa pratit, to a very particular manifestation. Ela shehem hem advarim, but that is actually the point. Hapanim, the face, hem hamakom hayichidi, they are the only location, b'chol gufo shel adam, in the entire body of a person, asher bo nikeret hi, that in that it is, in the face, it is recognized, b'midah yedua, to the known level, hitbatlut chaviota, the nullification of its materiality, shel haguf, of the body, legabe ora shel hadat, vis-a-vis the illumination of da'at. Ki halo chachmat adam ta'ir panav, because Chazal say the wisdom of a person illuminates their face. V'nimtza, and it turns out, lefi erech hitrabut koach hadat vehamatato, that according to the value or the quality of the abundance of the power of dat, or the opposite, ba b'midah, to that degree, yigdalo yaktin, it will increase or decrease ziv hapanim, the splendor of the face. Ziv hapanim, the splendor of the countenance, na'asehu al yidei zeh, is made through this, shehadat mazricha, that the da'at of a person shines forth, bitokef, with strength, et kave ora, the rays of its light, ad kedei kach, shehem bokim et abasar gidim va'atzamot shel haguf, to the degree, to the extent that they strike through the flesh, sinews, and bone of the body. V'karnim agabe ha'or, and they shine on top of the leather or skin of a person, umehapchim al yedei kach, and through that they turn at katunat ha'or, the dress of skin, l'ktonet ha'or, to a clothing of light. Hamakom hayichidi baguf, the only location on the body, hamusar tatzmo, that gives itself over, l'bkiat hadat, to the cutting through of dat, hu hanikra panim, that's what's called the face. Ulechein, and therefore, zacha makom zeh, this place merited likare b'shem panim, to be called with the name panim, mipnei shenikeret bo hitbatlut hachitzoniut, because through it, or through her, it is recognized the nullification of externality, legabe apnimiut, in the face of internal essence. Vahitbatlut chomer haguf, and the nullification of the materiality of the body, legabe or hadat, to the light of dat. Hitbatlut zeh, this nullification, hisod, that is the secret haziv of the splendor, hanimshach al panim, that is shines forth on the face, or from the face. Ziv zeh, this splendor, meid hu, it testifies, ki haguf nitpal hu etzel hadat, that a person's body, his physical presence, is only secondary to his dat, his consciousness. V'hadat na'arechet legabe haguf, and his consciousness is arranged over his body, ke'erech ha'ikar legabe hatafel, to with the quality of a primary to a secondary. Ve'omdim anu mitoch kach, and therefore we are standing here, able al kocha shel shvitat Shabbat, through the strength, the power of the rest on Shabbos, b'yetzirat ma'or panav shel adam, for the creation of an illumination of the face of a person. So this illumination is a direct result of Shabbos, because we said that Shabbos is the power where through dat, which was an element introduced into creation on the sixth day, Shabbat can now shine forth and nullify the days of the week as a secondary to its primary, and that's what somebody experiences, right, on the microcosm with his being, where his dat is able to shine forth from the materiality of his body and show how his physical presence is only secondary to his dat, and dat itself, because it's a function of Shabbos, and Shabbos is a function of dat. On Shabbos itself, a person's dat is even more manifest. Meaning, if dat is more manifest on Shabbos, that part of him, right, that's manifest through his flesh, is even more manifest. It gets a special splendor on Shabbos. So when the Chachamim said, where do you see the bracha of Shabbos? That it's manifest through the splendor of somebody's face. It's not a limitation of the bracha of Shabbos, but rather an indication of how great the bracha is, that it even has this quality of this, where a small aspect is able to show how really the essence is primary, as opposed to that which we saw until now, which is only really secondary.
I wanted to have said that, is it the Neshama Yetzira that gives Adam the dat to know that the Shabbat is the Ikar? Or are you saying that there's...
We don't say that the Neshama Yetzira is a function of dat. That's a separate... right now, in this piece, that would be seen as a separate element. I mean, it's just dat itself, right? So just like the dat...
I'm struggling to see the connection between Shabbat and dat. Why is it Shabbat's presence increases a person's dat?
Okay, so how can Shabbat be understood at all as primary? That's a function of dat, right? Dat needed to be introduced on the sixth day so that when Shabbat actually happens, it will be perceived as such. Because without dat, like we said, right, Shabbat does not take on that reality, right?
Right.
So now Shabbat, to that degree, we could say is a function of dat. That dat allows the illumination of Shabbat to turn the relation to, in a relationship, once it appears in a relationship with the days of the week, it turns the days of the week from primary to secondary.
Right.
Okay?
But did you say that Shabbat increases that?
Yes, one second. So from that degree, meaning this is what we said already, we understand, right?
Yeah.
And we're saying that Shabbat in that regard is a function of dat.
Right.
But what happens is, really, dat only can shine forth on Shabbat. Because it's when Shabbat is doing, just like dat is revealing Shabbat, Shabbat is revealing dat. Because dat doesn't do anything until you have the two to compare, and that's when dat kicks in. So dat is really only activated, it's only active when Shabbat is present.
Are you saying that there's no other usage of dat other than to identify that Shabbat? Surely dat is used in other areas of life.
It could be on the small level in your life, you're using dat all the time to the degree that you have it. But remember, we're talking about how this was the introduction of also cosmic dat, right? It's the Yom Shishi, it's the sixth Sphira. It's Yesod. That's another word for dat. So
it's a cosmic dat.
Yeah, meaning that's what we said before. Meaning for Shabbat to be Shabbat, there needed to be the introduction of dat first. That was introduced in tandem with the dat of a human being, right? But we're talking about dat. It is the day of dat.
So was there a cosmic dat?
That's what we've been talking about until now. Yeah, we're saying that Nasa Adam was the introduction of the sphere. Meaning, remember, every day, that's really what's happening in creation. Every day. The reason why the day is the way it is because that's facts on the ground, a description of that particular sphera that is being created then, right?
Could you go through that with us?
Well, Yom Rishon is Chesed, and Yom Sheni is Gvura, and Yom Shlishi is Tiferet, and Yom Revi'i is Netzach, and Yom Chamishi is Hod, and Yom Shishi is Yesod, and Shabbos is Malchut, right? And we'd have to talk about each one, what that is and why that's defined. But I mean, really, if you remember the story, I mean, let there be light is chesed, and then the division, the separation of the upper worlds and the lower worlds is gvurot, and gvurot by themselves, they didn't even get a kitov. And it's the meaning you have total thesis and then you have antithesis, and only in Tiferet that's bridge, it's Tiferet, and it's got a Pamayim Kitov, and that's the bridge between Chesed. Meaning you can whatever. But this is really the whole. That's what it's all about. That's the Sirot, and so we're talking cosmically. God, I mean, what that looks like is facts on the ground. What happened on that day, but dat cosmic dat was also was being made in tandem, so to speak, or has its moment when God is fashioning man.
Could it be said that the reason why the sixth day was called Kitov Me'od is because the cosmic dat, because that's the ultimate?
So you want to say that Tov Me'od would have a direct reference for the ability to make Shabbos here?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you that without directly addressing that, there is a Maamar where he talks about why on the fifth day there was a bracha and then a kitov. The fish got brachot, and then God said at the end of the day kitov. And then on Friday, he had to say tov ma'od before he gave the bracha to man. And why that has to do with Shabbos. Why on Yom Shishi, there's the tov ma'od is before the bracha.
Nice.
And that's the fulfillment, what the role of the tov ma'od is there. Okay, so you could look forward to that, please God.
Amen.
Okay, so dat, right? So a person has, how did God bless, in the words of the sages, Shabbos with the illumination on the face of a person. And the Pachad Yitzchok is telling us that's dat, right? Because Chazal also say that dat, or the Chachma, is the illumination on a person's face. Remember, the whole Maamar is coming to address the halachic anomaly that Shabbos itself fulfills the need to have panim chadashot, the new face, to have sheva brachot for chasan v'kala. Without having an actual person there who wasn't present before, you could have the same people there, and all of a sudden it's like a new face was there because of Shabbos, right? So it's not the new face of Shabbos, but rather everybody has a new face that they had before on Shabbos. They have their Shabbos face, right? That's, I believe, it looks like that's where we're going. Okay? Okay. Kishem sheda'ato shel adam bokati al yedei shvitat Shabbos es achutz shel ha'olam l'shem gilui hapanim shel ha'olam. Okay, before I translate this, I'm just thinking, when a person lives in Shabbos, in the context of Shabbos, you also see who the person is in a transcendent way. Right? We all know that we experience, like they say, everybody's a king on Shabbos. Meaning, it's the Shabbos and the Shvisa of Shabbos that puts us in a context that actually, we're in a way that our more exalted, transcendent self can be manifest and actualized. So it's not just that our dat, which is always there, our dat is functioning on a Sheshet Yimei HaMaisa level during the week. And on Shabbos, dat is true dat, but in a way also that everything is put in a, just like Shabbos is experiencing that and creation experiences that through Shabbos, it's our dat is experiencing that too. So yeah, of course our dat was before, but we know that it's the Shvita of Shabbat. In the context of Shabbos, it's more present, and that in itself is more manifest, right? We experience this. Okay, so Shvitat Shabbat, the cessation of, or the rest on Shabbos, hi giloi, that is a revelation of the koach hadat, the power of conscience, consciousness. Livkoa et gufo shel olam, to cut through the body of the world. B'chtei la'amod al ora, in order to stand, to present itself in full light. Shvisas Shabbos, the cessation of work, or the rest on Shabbos, hi giloi koach hadas, it is the revelation of the power of consciousness, livkoa et olam hateva, to cut through the world of nature, shel imros bereshis, the nature which came into being through the 10 statements, the utterances of creation, b'chtei levatlo, in order to be nullified, el or Torah, to the light of Torah, shel dibrot Sinai, of the 10 utterances of Sinai. V'halo adam karov etzel atzmo, man is close to himself, meaning he is beholden to himself. He is tied to himself. He is partial to himself. V'hasiman hayoter muvhak begufa adam, and the sign which is the most it most stands out in a person, Adam atzma, in a person himself, lekocha bekia shel adat, that it testifies to the power of his consciousness to cut through. Hu me'or panav shel adam is the illumination of his face, the illumination of the face of a person. Meaning that's what testifies for his ability at all to have consciousness, is that his consciousness shines through his guf. Kishem shedato shel adam, just like the consciousness of a person, bokaati, it cuts through. Al yidei shvitat Shabbos, through resting on Shabbos. Et hachutz shel ha'olam, it cuts through the external, the outside reality of the world. L'shem gilui hapanim shel ha'olam, in order to reveal the essence of the world, of creation. Kemokein, so too, bokat hi da'ato shel adam, a person's personal da'at, who they are, their being, in terms of their consciousness, that shines forth also in a magnified way. Al yidei shvisas Shabbos, through the cessation on Shabbos, es hachutz shel adam atzmo, of the externality of a person himself. Meaning, just like there's a nullification of the externality of being, of creation on Shabbos, a person himself in his being, there's that rest of that level of Yemei HaMasa, and who he really is, and his consciousness is magnified and shines forth. Right? L'shem giloi hapanim shel adam atzmo, hapnim, in order for the revelation of the essence of the person himself. Meaning we are truly who we are more in a magnified way, in a revealed way on Shabbos. That's the medium. Okay? Giloi hapanim shel Shabbos, the revelation of the internal essence of Shabbos. Hu me'or hapnim, that is the illumination of the face shel Shabbos, of Shabbos. Right? Eino domeh me'or panav shel adam bechol, the illumination of a person's face during the week does not compare the me'or panav shel adam b'Shabbos to the same illumination of a person's face on Shabbos. Okay? Tet. Kein amarnu, so we said, me'or panav shel adam, the illumination of the face of a person, hadgasha, that focus, or what's the word when you pronounce something? Oh, emphasis. Sorry. Okay. Hadgasha, the emphasis ba'a hi kan. It comes here gam al ha'me'or v'gam al ha'adam. Okay. So we have a statement. Me'or panav shel adam, the illumination of the face of the person. And the Pachad Yitzchok is telling us here that what we have to focus on is the illumination and the person. It has already been explained to us, Be'ot Zayin, in paragraph 7, Ki be'od sheshvitat Shabbat hi hefsek inyanam shel Maamarot Bereshit, just like the rest on Shabbos is the cessation of the workings of the utterances of creation. Hine b'nogea l'ma'amar nasa adam, regarding the utterance, let us make man, harehu lahefach, it's just the opposite. That the utterance, let us make man, was in a class by itself, right? On Shabbos, what did we say? The girl said that something happens on Friday specifically for Shabbos.
Oh, yes.
Right?
So let
He
us
says,
make man is that.
what did we say the cessation was? That since there's a revelation on Shabbos that shows that Shabbos is primary, the turning of that which was before to secondary is the cessation, right? And the Gra said, what is the cessation? That really Hashem continues, right? We say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actively creating reality every moment, except on Shabbos, where he apportioned that power, he did it double on Friday, right? So that means that Nase Adam, instead of stopping like all the other Maamarim, it's working double on Shabbos, okay?
It's preparing for Shabbat.
Right, so it's working double in order for Shabbos, right? So regarding the Maamar, the utterance, Na'asa Adam, let us make man, Harehu Hefach, it's the opposite, Ki Adarabba, right? Just the opposite. Hashvita, the cessation, Bishar HaMaamarot, regarding all the other utterances, Mafi'ilah Hi Maamar Na'asa Adam. So whereas they are shovet, they rest, Mafi'ilah, what is active, he ma'amar nasa adam. Nasa adam is actually still is active, meaning it, right? Biyeter se'etu, biyeter os, with more strength and more power. Halo ikar chidusho shel ma'amar nasa adam. What is the import, the novelty, what the utterance of nasa adam? What does that bring to the table? Hu briyat hadat. That is the creation of dat. And when is dat actually? When does dat get its day? Not on Friday, but rather on Shabbat is the true day of dat. Umemela gam b'tocho shel ha'adam atzmo b'telem hem shar kocho shel adam legabe koach hamiuchad sheba'adam dahainu lekoach hadat shehi ha'adam sheba'adam. So a man has your adam inside of you. What's that adam? What's that true adam? That's your dat, and your dat, right? All the other aspects, the person is a microcosm, right? All the utterances of creation that went into creation also are incorporated in man. He receives all that on a microcosm, right? Like we discussed with Alshech, right? So in so many different ways. So all those take a back seat to his dat on the day of dat, when the dat is active on Shabbos. So it's not just that your dat is shining forth more, it's able to shine forth because it's negating. As by emerging as a primary, there's a cessation. The rest of your kochot are mivatel themselves. They nullify themselves to the service of the primacy of your dat on Shabbos. They all quiet down to support dat in a more unified way.
What you're saying is the Pachad saying that on Shabbat the creative process of Na'aseh Adam is still active. Are we still creating?
Well, it's not the creative process. It's the element in the creative process of Nasa Adam that is active. Whereas on Shabbos, all the others we said are not active anymore. They've been nullified in their activity by the primacy now of Dat, of Shabbos. Remember, nothing stops. It's called stopping because it's been nullified vis-a-vis something of more prime importance that has appeared. The picture has changed. They now serve something. It seemed that they were all the strength in and of themselves, and now they're seen as just a supporting for something primarily that has emerged that was the point of it all.
But you're saying that the Nase Adam is activated on Shabbat. That's what basically you're saying.
Well, it's not that it's activated on Shabbat, but it's biyeter se'et ubiyeter oz. It's doing its main thing on Shabbat. And it's working double. So it's seen, it's more primary in its activeness, how it's being revealed on Shabbos than when it was initially just on Friday. Meaning its day is not really Friday. Its day, its created was Friday, but where you really see it is on Shabbos. Whereas that's where you see less of everything else.
That's why it answers the question why he told Me'od and then he creates man. Right?
Maybe if you want to plug that in and see it that way.
That's the start of Shabbat, really. After that,
it's interesting because Chazal don't. It would be confusing, I guess, for Chazal to say that Tov Ma'od on Friday is a reference to Shabbos, but in a way where he sets us up to see how that's an investment in Shabbos, it would be appropriate. But like on the Pshat level, there's a clear break between Friday and Shabbos. What he's telling us is it's not really like that. What's introduced on Friday is actually what makes Shabbos. And that's really, you see this maybe in the Man. That it says that God sanctified Shabbos. Why? But with what he did on Friday. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Okay, that's really the double portion. That's the metaphor. That's okay.
Very good.
Okay, so let's just finish this paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay. Ukimoken, and therefore, and similarly, lamadna, we learned la'el previously, ki itbatlut zo, this nullification of the secondary aspects to the primary, he sod ma'or panav shel adam v'zivan, that is the illumination of a person's face and its splendor, v'nimtza, and it turns out, ki ma'or panav shel adam, the illumination of the face of a person, b'Shabbos, specifically on the seventh day, he giloi yichiduso shel Maamar nasa adam. That is the true revelation of the novelty of that particular utterance of nasa adam, let us make man, be'etzem ha-basar v'dam shel gufa adam, in the essence of the flesh and blood body of a person. Meaning, you would just think on Friday, you would think nasa adam is the package adam, the body, the creature. But on Shabbos, you see that the Nasa Adam was the da'at that was invested within that body, that only reveals itself, right? Okay, great. Okay, Shvisas Shabbos, the resting on Shabbos, Molidahi, it gives birth to Et Me'or HaPanim, the illumination of the face, Bekaflut Kochoteh, with a doubling of her power. Al Yedei Giloi HaPanim, through the revelation of that which is internal, Mitoch Bekiat HaChutz, through cutting through the external. Okay, so there's this element that all of a sudden something which is in is revealed because it cuts through what usually is meant to hide it, right? V'ayidei havlatat ma'amar nasa adam, and also through the same phenomenon which the utterance of nasa adam is experiencing, that it now sticks out. Mitoch hefsek inyanim shel shar ma'amarot, in the contrast of the cessation of all the other utterances. Okay, so there's something internal that gets to shine forth, and there's the some sort of novel aspect of Nasa Adam that's revealed because of the cessation of all the other Maamarot. Okay, v'kachu seder hadvarim b'mikra, and this is how they the order that is expressed in the verse vayishbos vayivarech. First, it says that God, he rested, meaning that's the cessation, the nullification. And then there's vayivarech, an added dimension of bracha. Ein shvisa ela hafsaka. Shvisa, resting, really means a break, a cessation. Ve'ein bracha ela tosefet. And when we say there's a bracha, there's always an addition. There's a blessing. When we say there's a blessing, that's an added dimension. So if we want to contrast, the shvisa is a cessation or nullification, and bracha is an addition. V'halo hafsaka v'tosefes heim tarti desasri. And yet the phenomenon of cessation, together in contrast to the phenomenon of adding, they seem to be diametrically opposed, right? They're opposite phenomena. Ella she'al zeh amra chachamim, on this, the sages commented, shehabracha bekan hi hatosefet b'ma'or panav shel adam. That what is the bracha of Shabbos? That is the addition of the illumination of the face, which is only possible with the cessation, right? Right. That's the revelation of Dat, which is only possible when Dat experiences its ability in contrast to the cessation of all the other Maamarim.
It's talking about when God says on Vayivarech Yom HaShishi.
First says Vayishbos Vayamashi, right, and then says Vayivarech. And the Chachamim comment, what is that bracha? The Ma'or Panim. And what the Pachad Yitzchok is explaining is, first there's a cessation of all those other elements of creation. They become secondary to a primary, and then there's a Tosefet. That is what creates this added measure of Dat.
Is he saying that the bracha of Shabbat is only on the panim of
that was the whole question. He quoted the Chazal saying that in Chet, and that was the question.
But are we to understand?
That's exactly what he said.
Are we to understand that is exclusive or the majority? Like, was there other brachot on Shabbat?
That's the whole thing. That's we can read it again.
This was the only bracha.
That's exactly what he asked.
The only bracha.
Right, and that was his problem. He said that's a detail. You're limiting. I will refer you to the video. Okay. And we recorded it twice because we did a little bit of Chazal, But in short, basically, Chazal say, the Pasuk says, Shabbos was blessed. And Chazal say, what is the bracha on the face of a person? And he says, how can you say that? that is a detail of existence, you're limiting everything.
Right.
But it turns out that that's exactly the point. Whereas he says, Heim hadvarim. Yes. But it turns out that that's exactly the point, that the detail is not a limitation, that is the ultimate.
That's the ultimate
Yes,
expression.
yes,
of Shabbat.
exactly, right. Okay, so, right, and what was the pathology, so to speak, what were the steps that this process took? First, there's a cessation of everything else in this switch of primary becoming secondary in the face of something else, and that's what allows for a double portion of something to emerge. Okay, kilomar, that is to say, panav shel adam, the face of a person, hem hamakom hayichidi, that is the only location, sheribui haor, that the abundance, the extra, the added of the light, shebahem, which is within them, bahu dafka, now specifically they present themselves, machmat hafsek inyano shel hachutz, because of the cessation of the externality of existence, l'shem gilui hapanim, in order to reveal the inside. So there is a mechanism that quiets the outside for a true revelation of the inside, and that is what creates an added manifestation of dat and illumination of the face. Okay, v'shitukam shel shar kochot, and the quieting, the silencing of all the other forces in the world, l'shem havlatat koach hadat, in order for the emergence of the and presentation of the power of dat, of consciousness. Ro'im anu, we see efo lahedya demasha amr chachamim, that directly, that which the chachamim were referencing when they said that the vayivarech and God blessed. Who, that is directly referring to shebarcho b'ma'ar panav, that he blessed. How did he bless Shabbos? With the illumination of the panim, of the face, which means the revelation of the pnim, the inside. Eino tzimtzum, that is not a limitation at all. Klaliyut, that is not a limitation of the generality of the bracha, klaliyut bracha, like you were asking. Lahofa pratit, that is not taking a general bracha and limiting it to a particular instance. Ella, rather, she'adara, but just the opposite, riboy, the abundance of me'or panav shel adam, of the illumination of a face. Who mekar habracha, that is the source of all blessing. L'chol inyanei hatosafot, to all the other manifestations of riboy, of abundance, v'hayishuot, and salvation, shel shvitzat Shabbos, which comes from the cessation of work on Shabbos. So, meaning the best way to say all, meaning if I would describe the bracha, I could talk about separate elements. But whereas really you see the main bracha, really what is it? It's in this noting the phenomenon of this illumination.
And just to tie it up with the Alshech, was saying that at Naaseh Adam, the dat that was injected into man was also injected into to the woman while she was still within the body of the man. That they both achieved that.
Okay. So, I would say like this. The Naaseh Adam, the Alshech says, is the incorporation of all the elements of the universe into the microcosm of the human being. Right? So, therefore, and since in the Alshech that we learned today, that the Isha, on the level of entity, was already present completely with her own set of that in of the presence of the human known as Adam, but had to be fleshed out, right? But that was just a physical form issue, right? So Naaseh Adam is going on all those faculties that are shared in humanity that ultimately will be manifest in woman too.
So,
meaning she's still a microcosm, just like he's a microcosm. On the Naaseh Adam is the microcosm level. All those elements that were incorporated on the level of Naaseh Adam equally are separate in man and woman. The only thing that happened by the story of Chava was a separation in terms of form.
Right, and we said, the Alshech said that took place in the fact that before, the only thing that Chava didn't have was speech and action.
It's not that she didn't have it, it's that no, that's in the level where they were separate and united. They were separate on the level of thought. They were united on the level of speech and the level of action.
Oh, sorry.
But in terms of Chava coming into being, if you would just chart her story, her coming into being, she at the inception, she was present just like Adam was present on every level.
With that.
Till the level, meaning everything quality that Adam would get, ultimately she got too, in tandem. Except the only time where it seemed like he got something and she only later received it was on the level of body.
Which it manifests in speech and action.
No.
She had speech.
No, body is on the level of Maisa. You're conflating two issues. You're talking about where they were united and where they were separate.
Right.
I'm talking about what they both had and what they didn't have. They both had separately their own things, except for a body at some point. But they were united. When God gave them a name, He called them a name to unify their essence. He called them both Adam, that unified their essence. The fact that why did He have this moment, like I'm saying, where they shared a body at one point, that was also meant to unify them. Those two things were meant to unify, but it doesn't mean that they weren't separate.
So remind me where He said that there was a difference with speech and action.
Okay, He says, okay, they were separate on the level of thought.
Yeah.
Now, when we say separate and together, I'm about to say separate and together, it doesn't mean equal and not equal. Meaning, when they were separate, right, whatever Adam had, whatever man had, woman had. When Adam was two separate beings, whatever man had, woman had, right? There was a moment when they were together. That means that only Adam had one thing and she had to share it. What was that? The body.
Yeah.
Right? The story of Nasa Adam doesn't include that part, that iteration. Right? This is a retelling. I mean, Nasa Adam, on the level of Nasa Adam, we didn't talk about this. Right? We just talked about all of humanity, which incorporates man and woman.
Mm-hmm.
They're microcosms.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That means at the end product, everything that man's going to have, which is an incorporation of microcosm, woman's going to independently have that too.
Right.
Right? And in the beginning also, whatever man had on the level of nefesh, woman had independently too. There was only a moment where they shared something, and that was in the body. There was a moment where she had to share, she had to be latent in his body. She didn't have her own body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But that doesn't mean that has nothing to do with dat, and that has nothing to do with Nasa Adam, just means her process went through a different place. And what was the point of that? So we said on the level to unify them on the level of speech, you just had to call them a name, even though they existed independently before. I mean, remember, they started off independently, so he has to unite them, meaning giving them the facility to be able to come together. So on the level of name, of speech, he gave them a name that unified them. They gave them the ability to unify. And then on the level of action, what did that look like to unify them? He did this thing where she didn't have her own body for her body had to be drawn out of his. But in terms of dat and those implications, and even that she's a microcosm, and even ultimately what she becomes, it has no implications.
Why does the Alshech have to explain this? The idea of the unifying through this name?
Because the pasuk addresses that they're both called the same thing. That it says shemam, that they existed separate, but he called them one name. So he's charting that phenomenon that on the level of nefesh, on the level of machshava, they were separate, but then he pulled them down back together. And he'll say that why did God do that? Every time he does that, he's saying that on a certain level, dimension of their existence, there needs to be the ability to connect. What's unique is, what's fascinating, comes out from this, that on the level of thought, you cannot connect. I mean, think about what he's saying. It's stuff you know already, right? On the level of machshava, you and Anisha are completely two different worlds, and never the twain shall meet.
Right.
On the level of name, absolutely, we identify the same, we relate the same, our reality, we use the same language, right? Our experiences are both the experiences, it's human experience, it's aspects of human experience, right? We wouldn't be this, we're the same species. And in terms of body, we unite even on the physical level, we can create a unit, a family unit together. So, it's just a description of reality.
I see.
These things are very, very deep. We never really think about them, we just read them. But
that's why I wanted to flesh it out.
Yeah. Right? That's the term for the season. Okay, Baruch Hashem, the Olam, Amen.
Thank God.